What's up guys, welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks, and today we are doing a deck tech on Zacama, specifically an Enchantress build. Now I had a lot of people asking me, why Zacama enchantments? Honestly, I think she's going to be super useful as an Enchantress build because the number one thing you want to do in a Zacama deck is get her on the battlefield as soon as possible. And we can use enchantments to catapult ourselves ahead of our opponents, right? Now we use just 8 cards that'll let us draw a card whenever we cast an enchantment spell. And then there's a ton of green enchantments that we can use to enchant our lands with. That way we're tapping our lands for additional mana. So now we can get her on the battlefield faster by basically playing additional lands, but you're not really, you're just enchanting lands. And then we can include, of course, the hexproof lands. That way our opponents can't target the lands and, destroy our whole game plan. Additionally, enchantments have a few other synergies that I think are pretty cool. We can just triple her power and take someone out with commander damage. That sounds pretty fun. We do also have the option to, use Phyrexian Vindicator to activate that broken ability on Zacama, do a ton of damage to Phyrexian Vindicator, and take everybody out. This deck does go infinite because, again, it's Zacama. That's kind of what you do with her. So, if that kind of sounds like the deck tech you're into, let's get into it. Let's talk about the core of the deck, which is definitely going to be those cards that are going to draw us a card whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield or we cast it. Starting off, we have Sithis, Enchantress Presence, Citizen Champion, and Edelana Blossoms, Mesa Enchantress, Satyr Enchanter, Verduran Enchantress, and finally, Argothian Enchantress. Now, this one's kind of like, if you want to include it, you can. She's super expensive, but honestly, I want to make sure I show you guys all the options for that enchantment card draw in this deck tech. Moving on, we have those enchantments that we are going to enchant our lands with Wild Growth, Fertile Ground, Wolf Willow Haven, and Blighted Burgeoning. Again, we're doing this, and while we're doing this, we're drawing cards while ramping to Oblivion. Perfect to get that Zacama on the battlefield as soon as possible. Verdant Haven and Elfish Guidance also make an appearance in this deck. They're not as efficient, but hey, they still do what we want to do. Lastly, we have Dawn's Reflection, Market Festival, and Overgrowth. These are all going to tap for 2 additional mana, which can be really powerful, and like I said, catapult us to our Zacama as fast as possible. Trace of Abundance is our last enchant land card, and this one's super important. This one will give your land Shroud. Now, notably, you don't want this to be the first enchantment because once it has Shroud, you can't target it, but if you suit that land up and then throw this on afterwards, it should protect it very nicely. Then we have some other enchantment synergies that just want us casting enchantments. Sanctum Weaver, this is going to tap for a ton of mana equal to the amount of enchantments on the battlefield. Sigil of the Empty Throne, now we're getting those angels whenever we're casting enchantments, super solid. Archon of Sun's Grace, now we're getting those 2/2 Pegasuses, or Pegasi? Yeah, Pegasi, fuck it. And that's going to be super solid. A Johnny's Chosen, we get those cats, and then we have Hallowed Hauntings. I like this one because those spirit creatures are going to be massive, especially if we just keep casting those enchantments. People aren't going to be able to stop us. Everybody knows enchantment spells do tend to durdle a little bit, so let's talk about how we win with this deck and why I think it could be more efficient than other Enchantress builds. Nylea's Colossus. Now, this one's one of my favorite ways to win because we just cast like 2 enchantment spells. We're going to turn her into an 18/18 and then a 27/27, swing it at our opponents, and that's commander damage right there. That's pretty fun, right? Aether Flash is going to be solid for those token strategies, right? They're not going to let anything stick on the battlefield. And then it pairs really well with Polyraptor. Now, most people will say, well, that's an infinite combo that never stops, so it will end in a draw. But we can use Zacama's ability to go ahead and destroy the enchantment after we have, 10,000 Polyraptors, however many Polyraptors you want, and that will defeat the loop, and we can then take people out. Additionally, it is worth mentioning, we run Fires of Yavimaya. That way we can have haste for our Polyraptors to go ahead and start taking people out. Additionally, it's just kind of cool for, Zacama to have haste anyway, right? Especially if we can triple her power the turn she comes down. That way we can start taking our opponents out. It's just going to be a good time. Lastly, I don't think I have to tell you guys that Zacama is a mana-producing machine. All we need to do is bounce her back to our hand with effects like Meticulous Excavation, Temur Sabertooth, and Sanctum of Eternity. Then we can use her abilities infinitely, right? The only problem is her damage ability does not target opponents, so we can't go ahead and take everybody out with that unless we have a Phyrexian Vindicator, right? Now we just go ahead and target our Phyrexian Vindicator for a ton of damage to take out all of our opponents, and we've won the game. Good job, guys. Moving on to the supporting cards in the deck, we have Sterling Grove. Not only will this give our other enchantments you control Shroud, we can also sacrifice it to search your library for an enchantment. Super flexible card. Moonblessed Cleric, we can go ahead and search our library for any enchantment card, reveal it, shuffle it, put it on top, right? This is going to be really good because we can blink this, right? We have ways to put it back into our hand and cast it again. I guess that's not blinking, but you guys get the point, right? Jukai Naturalist. This is going to lower the cost of our enchantments. This is almost better than Ramp, especially if you're casting more than one enchantment a turn, which is definitely what this deck wants to do. Herald of Pantheon does exactly the same thing. And then we have Elish Norn, Mother of Machines. Whenever we're casting those enchantments and they're entering the battlefield, triggering our draw abilities, it'd be pretty cool to draw 2 cards instead of 1, right? So that's going to be super solid. Additionally, this will untap our lands twice with Zacama. I like it. Morari's Wake is going to go ahead and double our mana while buffing our creatures up a little bit. Not super important, but hey, we'll take it. Privileged Position, that's going to give all of our other permanents hexproof. Solid because, Shroud is where it kind of gets, a little messy with us enchanting our lands. Arasta, Felidar Retreat, and Luminarch Ascension is going to make it to where we have a little bit of cushion. That way we can block. Again, Zacama's in the command zone. That's going to make us scary on its own. And if our board's open and people have, extra creatures to attack with, it's definitely coming at us and we kind of deserve it. Timeless Witness, Eternal Witness, and Dowsing Shaman are going to be super solid cards to get any enchantments we need from our graveyard back onto our battle or into our hand, and then they go back onto the battlefield, right? Additionally, Eternal Witness and Timeless Witness can get the creatures and whatever we need, right? Triumphant Reckoning is late game. We have nothing. Our plan's been foiled. Zacama costs 20 mana. We cast this baby and bring all of our enchantments back onto the battlefield, and we're cooking again. Smothering Tithe, enchantment, gives us a ton of mana. I love it. Mana Bloom. This one's in the deck because you're always going to cast it for X equaling 1. You're going to get the draws off of all of your enchantresses, and then it's going to go back into your hand so you can solidly, cast an enchantment every turn. Pretty good. Voyaging Satyr and Portent Tracker. These ones are going to be super solid because when you massively stack up that land and then untap it, these can basically make it to where you're tapping a land for 7 mana. I like it. Moving on to the card advantage, it's super simple. Sylvan Library is going to be solid in this deck because, again, we can gain life with Zacama, so paying 4 life or 8 life to draw 2 additional cards is going to be really worth it in this deck. Smuggler's Share, I really like this one because it gives us ramp and card advantage, and it's an enchantment. It synergizes with the deck perfectly. Jessica's Will, I know you thought this card was only good when your commander's on the battlefield, but hear me out. If someone's got a full grip and we cast this, all we need is a white and a green to cast our Zacama. We could literally get Zacama on the battlefield as soon as turn 4 or 5 with this card, so it's definitely worth the include, and then with our commander on the battlefield, it's just solid card advantage and ramp. Rin's Resolve. I've been shoving this in more decks over, Faithless Looting because Faithless Looting makes you discard, right? Well, Rin's Resolve is just 2 mana, basically draw 2 cards. Additionally, if we can't value off of the graveyard synergies of Faithless Looting, it's not worth including over this anymore, in my opinion. Moving on to our removal, we have all our jail effects with Darksteel Mutations, Kinrith's Transformation, and Song of the Dryads. Super cards for shutting down their commander. Honestly, it sucks to have one of these put on your commander, and it's super effective. Cinder Vines. One, this is going to, turn all of those spell slinger strategies off or really make them think about how much they want to storm off. Additionally, if we sacrifice it, we can destroy an artifact or enchantment. I like it. Pyrohemia is going to be super solid against all of those token strategies. Additionally, cards like our Phyrexian Vindicator and Polyraptor are going to love this card to just populate the crap out of our board or deal a lot of damage to our opponents. Ashling Pilgrim, kind of the same strategy here, but we can get her really big and just do a straight up board wipe. I really like this girl. Remember, we are going to have a lot of extra mana in this deck because if we're not casting Zacama, we've just got a ton of mana on the battlefield because these enchantment spells we included are 1 to 3 drops. They're not expensive at all. That's why I think it really catapults us to the, victory. Chain Reaction, Blasphemous Act, and Star of Extinction. Again, super solid with our Phyrexian Vindicator. Additionally, this will keep the creature strategies at a bare minimum and really keep them, really having to rebuild their board. Farewell, a super solid removal card that gets rid of whatever strategy has taken over the board. Notably, we don't ever have to choose enchantments, which is going to be really good for us. That's going to do it for the deck tech, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you think about this deck down in the comments below, and as always, I hope this helped you in your deck building endeavors.